The summer the billionaire arrived began with a broken fishing rod and a thunderstorm rolling across Willow Lake. Looking back now, that should have been my warning. Life has a funny way of changing forever on days that seem completely ordinary. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 44 years old. I live in a small lakeside town where everyone knows everyone else's business, and the biggest local scandal usually involves somebody stealing bait from the marina. I own a modest fishing guide service. Tourists come during the summer. Locals come when they need peace and quiet. And every morning before sunrise, I take my old aluminum boat onto the lake with whoever happens to be paying for the trip. It isn't glamorous. It isn't exciting, but it gives me something money can't buy. Time with my son. Liam Brooks was 12 years old and somehow managed to have more energy than the rest of the town combined. He had inherited his mother's smile. Every time he laughed, it felt like she was still somewhere nearby. 5 years had passed since cancer took her away. 5 years. Long enough for the pain to dull. Not long enough for me to stop missing her. Then again, I wasn't sure that ever happened. "Dad," Liam shouted from the dock. "You're drifting again." I blinked. The fishing boat had slowly moved away from the pier while I was lost in thought. "Sorry." Liam laughed. "Thinking about Mom again?" I smiled. The kid knew me too well. Maybe. He sat beside me on the dock. Silence settled between us. Comfortable silence. The kind that only exists between people who don't need to fill every moment with words. Then Liam nudged my shoulder. "She'd tell you to stop being lonely." My chest tightened immediately. Because he was right. She absolutely would. Then I laughed softly. "You sound just like her." "Good." Another pause. She was smart. Before I could answer, the distant sound of helicopter blades echoed across the lake. Both of us looked up, then frowned. Willow Lake didn't get many helicopters. The town barely got traffic lights. Yet a sleek black helicopter was descending toward the resort on the opposite shore. Liam whistled. "Somebody rich is here." I nodded. "Definitely." Neither of us thought much about it. Wealthy tourists came and went all summer. They rented lake houses, took photographs, bought expensive fishing equipment they didn't know how to use, then left after a few days. By next week we'd probably forget this helicopter ever existed. We were wrong. Very wrong. The next morning began like every other. Coffee, sunrise, fishing gear, a group of tourists from Chicago. Nothing unusual. Until 10 o'clock. That's when a black SUV appeared beside the dock. Then another. Then another. My stomach tightened immediately. Because nobody in Willow Lake traveled in a convoy unless they were running for president or hiding from the government. Then the rear door of the first SUV opened. A woman stepped out. Every conversation on the dock stopped. Complete silence. She looked about 40. Elegant. Confident. Expensive. Not in an obvious way. In the way that makes everyone else suddenly aware of their own clothing. Dark brown hair, sharp gray eyes, tailored jacket. The kind of presence that fills a room before a person even speaks. Then she walked directly toward me. Not the marina office. Not the boat rental desk. Me. My pulse accelerated slightly. Then she stopped 3 feet away. "Mr. Ethan Brooks?" Her voice was calm, controlled, professional. I nodded. "That's me." She studied me for several seconds, long enough to become uncomfortable. Then she extended her hand. "Victoria Hayes." The name meant nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. Then every tourist standing behind me gasped at exactly the same moment. My stomach immediately tightened, because apparently I was the only person in America who didn't know who Victoria Hayes was. Then one of the tourists whispered, "The CEO." Another whispered, "No way." Suddenly it clicked. Victoria Hayes, Hayes Technologies, billion-dollar company, magazine covers, business television. The woman who seemed to appear every time somebody made a list of the most powerful executives in America, and somehow she was standing on my dock. Then she surprised me. "I need your help." Silence. Complete silence. I honestly thought she'd come to complain about a reservation, or rent a boat, or buy fishing gear. Instead, she looked around to make sure nobody was listening. Then she said something I never expected. "I'll pay you $100,000. My brain stopped working. Completely stopped working. "For what?" Victoria looked toward the SUV. Then the rear passenger door slowly opened. A teenage boy stepped out, maybe 13 years old, thin, pale, head down, hoodie pulled over his hair despite the summer heat. He didn't look at anyone, didn't smile, didn't speak. He just stood there, like he wanted to disappear. Then Victoria looked back at me. For the first time since arriving, the confidence in her eyes faded slightly. Not much, just enough to reveal something underneath. Worry, real worry. Then she spoke quietly. Teach my son how to smile again. The entire dock went silent. Even the lake seemed quieter. Then I looked at the boy. He stared at the ground, motionless, like somebody carrying a weight nobody else could see. Then I looked back at Victoria. What happened to him? The CEO's expression changed immediately. Pain flashed across her face. Fast, but unmistakable. Then she answered with 4 words that would change all of our lives. His father died 5 years ago. His father died 5 years ago. The words hung in the air between us. For a moment, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Even the tourists standing nearby seemed to understand this wasn't their conversation anymore. Then I looked back at the boy. He couldn't have been more than 13. Yet somehow he looked older. Not physically, emotionally. Like life had asked too much of him too soon. Then I looked at Victoria. And you think fishing will fix that? To my surprise, she smiled. Not because it was funny, because she'd probably asked herself the same question 100 times. No, silence. Then why are you here? Victoria looked toward the lake. The sunlight danced across the water. Small waves rolled gently toward the shore. For the first time since arriving, she seemed uncertain. Because nothing else has worked. Complete silence followed. Then she sighed. Therapists, another pause. Doctors, another pause. Special schools, another pause. Nothing. Her voice grew quieter. He barely speaks to me anymore. My eyes drifted back toward the boy. He still hadn't looked up once. Then Victoria reached into her handbag and handed me a folder. You should read this. I opened it. Inside were photographs, medical reports, school evaluations, progress summaries. The further I read, the heavier my chest felt. Oliver Hayes, age 13, academic performance excellent, social interaction minimal, participation in activities almost non-existent, signs of emotional withdrawal, persistent guilt response, sleep disturbances, anxiety episodes. My stomach tightened. Then I closed the folder. Persistent guilt? Victoria's expression changed immediately. The therapists believe he blames himself. Silence. For what? Victoria looked away, toward her son. Then she answered quietly. His father's death. Complete silence. The lake suddenly felt much quieter. Then I looked at Oliver again. This time I noticed things I hadn't before. The way his shoulders remained tense, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he seemed prepared for disappointment before anyone even spoke. I'd seen that look before, not in children, in veterans. Then Liam appeared beside me carrying a tackle box. He stopped when he saw Oliver. Then looked at Victoria. Then looked at me. What's happening? I smiled. Not sure yet. Liam studied Oliver for several seconds, then did something adults would never do. He walked directly toward him. My pulse accelerated, because children are either geniuses or disasters. There is rarely a middle ground. Then Liam stopped in front of Oliver. Silence. Complete silence. Finally Liam spoke. Do you like fishing? Oliver shrugged. No. Good. Oliver blinked. What? Liam smiled. Fishing is boring. The first sign of life appeared on Oliver's face. Not a smile. Not even close. Just confusion. Then Liam continued. Most of the time you're sitting in a boat doing nothing. Another pause. Sometimes for hours. Oliver stared at him, then finally looked up. The first eye contact he'd made since arriving. Why do you do it then? Liam grinned. Because every once in a while something interesting happens. For several seconds neither boy spoke. Then Liam shrugged. Plus my dad lets me drive the boat sometimes. That got a reaction. Tiny. Almost invisible. But it was there. Then Liam pointed toward the lake. Want to see the biggest base in town? Oliver hesitated. then quietly asked, "Is there actually a biggest base in town?" Liam nodded confidently. "Probably." The boy was making everything up. I could tell. Then again, so could Oliver, which somehow made it work. Meanwhile, Victoria watched the interaction like someone witnessing a miracle. Then she looked at me. That was more conversation than I've heard from him all week. I glanced toward the boys. Liam was already explaining something using dramatic hand gestures. Oliver looked confused but engaged. Then I sighed. Kids are weird. To my surprise, Victoria laughed. A real laugh. Brief, soft, genuine. Then she caught herself and immediately returned to CEO mode. It was almost impressive. Then she handed me a business card. $100,000. Silence. For the summer. I stared at the card. Then at the number she'd written on the back. Then at the card again. My brain struggled to process it. $100,000 was more money than I usually earned in months. It could pay off debts, repair the marina, replace my truck, help Liam's college fund. Yet something felt wrong. Then I handed the card back. Victoria looked surprised. "No?" I shook my head. "Not like that." Silence. Complete silence. Then she frowned. "What does that mean?" I pointed toward Oliver. "He's not a business project." Another pause. "He's your son." For several seconds, Victoria didn't respond. Then she looked away. Toward the water, toward Oliver, toward everything except me. Finally she spoke. "I know." Her voice sounded tired, very tired. Then she continued. "The problem is..." Another pause. "I don't know how to help him anymore." The honesty surprised me, because powerful people rarely admit when they're lost. Then I glanced toward Liam and Oliver again. Somehow they were already sitting on the edge of the dock arguing about fish. Children work fast. Then I looked back at Victoria. "Stay for lunch." She blinked. "What?" "Lunch." Silence. "Why?" I shrugged. "Because before I decide anything..." Another pause. "I'd like to meet your son." Complete silence followed. Then something softened in her expression, just slightly. Then she nodded. "Okay." 3 hours later, the four of us sat at a small lakeside diner overlooking Willow Lake. It wasn't fancy. Plastic menus, wooden booths, local photographs on the walls. The kind of place where everyone knew your name. Victoria looked completely out of place, yet strangely comfortable. Liam was halfway through a story involving a raccoon, a fishing net, and a police officer. Oliver was actually listening, occasionally even responding. Tiny responses, but responses nonetheless. Then the waitress arrived with milkshakes. Liam smiled. Oliver looked confused. "I didn't order that." The waitress pointed toward me. "He did." Oliver looked at the milkshake, then at me, then back at the milkshake, like he'd forgotten they existed. Then slowly he took a sip. The smallest smile appeared, barely visible, gone almost immediately, but not before Victoria saw it, not before I saw it either. Then I looked at her. And for a moment the billionaire CEO looked like she might cry. She quickly looked away. But it was enough. Then Oliver quietly asked Liam a question. Then another. Then another. Conversation started flowing naturally, not forced, not managed, natural. And sitting across from them, Victoria Hayes stared at her son as though she was seeing him for the first time in years. What none of us realized was that this lunch wasn't the beginning of a summer job. It was the beginning of something much bigger, something none of us were prepared for, especially me. What none of us realized was that this lunch wasn't the beginning of a summer job. It was the beginning of something much bigger, something none of us were prepared for, especially me. The next Monday morning arrived bright and clear. Willow Lake looked like a postcard. Sunlight sparkled across the water. Birds circled above the shoreline. The entire town seemed determined to show off. Then a black SUV rolled into the marina parking lot at exactly 8 o'clock, followed by another, and another. I sighed. Liam laughed. "She's definitely rich. Very." The rear passenger door opened. Oliver stepped out. Hoodie, headphones, same guarded expression. Then another door opened and Victoria emerged carrying a laptop, 2 phones, and what looked like enough work to run a small country. Liam stared. "Does she always bring her office everywhere?" "Probably." To my surprise, Oliver answered first. Pretty much. It was the longest sentence I'd heard him say. Then Victoria walked over. Good morning. Liam smiled. Morning. I nodded. Morning. Oliver offered a small shrug that apparently counted as a greeting. Then Victoria immediately checked her phone. Then, another phone. Then her watch. Then the first phone again. Liam leaned toward me. Is she okay? I whispered back. I think that's just how CEOs breathe. The kid nearly choked, trying not to laugh. Then I pointed toward the boat. All right. Silence. Everybody on board. Victoria blinked. Everybody? Everybody. Another pause. Including you. She looked genuinely confused. I wasn't planning to go. I smiled. I know. Silence. Complete silence. Then I added, that's the problem. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Liam jumped into the boat. Oliver followed. Then both boys stared at Victoria, waiting. Finally, the billionaire CEO sighed, the dramatic kind of sigh usually reserved for people accepting their fate. Then she climbed aboard. 10 minutes later, we were moving across open water. Willow Lake stretched endlessly around us. No traffic, no meetings, no reporters, just water and sky. The boys sat near the bow, while Victoria occupied the rear bench, laptop open, phone in hand, still working. Then I cut the engine. The boat drifted quietly. The sudden silence felt enormous. Then Victoria looked up. Why did we stop? Because we're fishing. She frowned. Already? I smiled. This is the fishing part. Silence. Complete silence. Then Liam laughed. See? I told you it was boring. Oliver actually smiled. Tiny, but real. Victoria noticed it immediately. So did I. Then the boys started preparing fishing lines. Meanwhile, Victoria reopened her laptop. That lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then I reached over and gently closed it. The CEO stared at me, shocked. What are you doing? Saving your summer. Silence. Complete silence. Then she pointed toward the laptop. I have meetings. I pointed toward the lake. You have fish. Liam nearly fell into the water laughing. Even Oliver looked entertained. Then Victoria crossed her arms. You can't just tell me not to work. Actually, I can. Another pause. You hired me. The boys laughed again. Then Victoria looked around the lake, around the boat, around the peaceful silence she'd spent years avoiding. Finally, she put both phones away. It seemed physically painful. Then something unexpected happened. Nothing. Absolutely nothing happened. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Nobody talked much. Nobody checked emails. Nobody rushed anywhere. The lake simply existed. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tension began leaving Victoria's shoulders. Then Oliver suddenly pointed. Dad would have liked this. The words hit the boat like a thunderclap. Complete silence followed. Liam stopped moving. I stopped moving. Victoria froze. Because apparently nobody had expected those words. Least of all Oliver. The boy stared at the water, then looked away immediately, like he regretted saying anything at all. Then Victoria spoke softly. Yeah. Silence. He would have. Another pause. He loved being outside. Oliver nodded once. Nobody pushed further. Nobody asked questions. The conversation drifted away naturally, but something had changed. A crack had appeared in a wall that had stood for 5 years. Later that afternoon, the boys wandered along a wooded trail near the shoreline while Victoria and I packed equipment. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she surprised me. Thank you. I glanced up. For what? She looked toward Oliver. He and Liam were throwing stones into the water, arguing about whose throw went farther. Normal kid stuff. For today, another pause. I haven't seen him act like that in years. Silence. Complete silence. Then she laughed softly. Actually, another pause. I haven't seen him act like a kid in years. The honesty caught me off guard. Then I leaned against the dock railing. Can I ask you something? Victoria nodded. Sure. When was the last time you took a day off? Her answer came immediately. I don't remember. I blinked. That's not good. She smiled. It's worked so far. I looked toward Oliver. Then back at her. Has it? Silence. Complete silence. The smile disappeared. Then Victoria stared across the lake. For the first time since meeting her, she looked less like a CEO and more like a widow, a mother, a person carrying something heavy. Finally, she spoke. After my husband died, another pause. Work was easier. I didn't interrupt. Then she continued. Companies make sense. Another pause. Numbers make sense. Another pause. Loss doesn't. The words lingered between us. Then I nodded slowly, because I understood exactly what she meant. 5 years earlier, after my wife died, I had buried myself in work too. Not because I loved it. Because staying busy hurt less than stopping. Then a loud splash interrupted the moment. Both of us turned. Liam had fallen into the lake. Liam had fallen into the lake. Completely. The boys erupted with laughter. Liam surfaced shouting dramatic complaints. Oliver was laughing too. Actually laughing. Not smiling. Laughing. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Victoria froze. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. Then she looked away before anyone could notice. Unfortunately, I noticed. Because for the first time since arriving at Willow Lake, her son sounded happy. Because for the first time since arriving at Willow Lake, her son sounded happy. The laugh lasted only a few seconds. Then Oliver seemed to realize what he'd done and immediately looked away. But it was too late. Everyone had heard it. Liam was still floating in the water, pretending he'd been attacked by a lake monster. I eventually pulled him back onto the dock while he continued describing his near-death experience in dramatic detail. Oliver rolled his eyes, which, surprisingly, was progress. Real progress. Because children who stop caring don't roll their eyes. They don't react. They don't engage. They disappear. Oliver was beginning to come back, slowly, but undeniably. Over the next week, a routine emerged. Every morning the Hayes convoy arrived. Every morning Victoria promised herself she'd only stay for an hour. And every afternoon she somehow remained until sunset. The first few days, she still brought laptops. Then fewer laptops. Then only one laptop. Eventually, even that stayed inside the SUV most of the time. Liam noticed first. She's changing. I looked up from untangling fishing line. Who? Victoria. Another pause. She smiles more. Kids notice everything. The scary part is they're usually right. Then Liam grinned. You smile more too. I immediately threw a towel at him. Unfortunately, he dodged it. Meanwhile, Oliver and Liam had become nearly inseparable. The transformation happened so gradually nobody noticed until it was already complete. One afternoon I found them building a small wooden dock extension behind the marina. The design was terrible. The measurements were worse. But they were having the time of their lives. That board is crooked, I called out. Liam shrugged. Adds character. Oliver nodded seriously. Architectural innovation. I stared at them. Then they both burst out laughing. Even Oliver, especially Oliver. Later that evening, Victoria arrived alone. No Oliver, no assistants, no security detail, just Victoria. That alone felt unusual. Then she sat beside me on the dock and stared across the lake. Silence settled between us. Comfortable silence. The kind that had started appearing more often lately. Finally she spoke. He's sleeping again. I glanced over. Oliver? She nodded. Through the night. Another pause. First time in years. The words carried more emotion than she intended. Then she laughed softly. His therapist thinks it's because he's finally connecting with people his age. I looked toward the water. Probably. She smiled. Liam deserves some credit. A lot of credit. Another pause. The kid could make friends with a brick wall. Victoria laughed. A real laugh. Then the silence returned. Not awkward, just peaceful. The sun slowly descended toward the horizon. Orange light painted the lake gold. Then Victoria surprised me. What was she like? My pulse tightened immediately, because I knew exactly who she meant. My wife, Emma. For a moment I simply stared at the water. Then I smiled. Loud. Victoria laughed. Really? Extremely. Another pause. She talked to strangers in grocery stores. Victoria shook her head. Terrifying. I know. Then I smiled again. She loved thunderstorms. Another pause. And old country music. Another pause, and embarrassing me in public. Victoria listened quietly. Then she looked down at her hands. I don't talk about Daniel much anymore. Silence. Complete silence. Then she continued. At first people asked all the time. Another pause. Then less. Another pause. Then never. I nodded slowly, because grief works that way. The world moves forward long before you're ready. Then Victoria stared at the lake. I'm afraid if I stop talking about him. Another pause. I'll lose him. The honesty in her voice nearly broke my heart. Then I looked at her. Really looked at her. Not the billionaire. Not the CEO. Just a woman who lost the person she loved. A woman who had been carrying that loss alone for 5 years. Then I smiled gently. That's not how it works. She looked at me. No? I shook my head. The people we love leave fingerprints on everything. Silence. Complete silence. Then I pointed toward the marina. Toward Liam. Toward the life around us. Emma's still here. Another pause. Every time Liam laughs, Victoria looked away immediately. Her eyes glistened in the fading sunlight. Then she whispered, I hope you're right. We sat there until the stars appeared, neither of us in a hurry to leave, neither of us wanting to break whatever strange peace had settled between us. Then a phone rang. Victoria's phone. The moment she looked at the screen, her expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. The peace vanished, instantly. Then she answered. Silence followed. Complete silence. She listened. Her face slowly lost color. My stomach tightened immediately, because bad news has a look, and I recognized it. Then she stood. When? Another pause. How much? More silence. Finally she ended the call. For several seconds she simply stared at the lake. Then I stood beside her. What's wrong? Victoria looked exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. Then she whispered, The board wants me back in Chicago. Silence. Complete silence. My pulse accelerated, because Chicago wasn't an hour away. It wasn't a day away. It was a different life. Then she continued, They're demanding I return immediately. Another pause. And they expect Oliver to come with me. The lake suddenly felt much quieter. Then I looked toward the marina where Liam and Oliver were still laughing together. Unaware. Happy. Free. For the first time in years. Then Victoria whispered the sentence that changed everything. If I take him back now. Another pause. I'm afraid I'll lose him all over again. If I take him back now. Another pause. I'm afraid I'll lose him all over again. The words lingered between us long after Victoria stopped speaking. The lake remained calm. The sunset reflected across the water. Somewhere near the marina, Liam and Oliver were still laughing about something neither of us could hear. And suddenly, I understood exactly why Victoria looked terrified. Not because of her board, not because of her company. Because for the first time in 5 years, her son was healing, and now someone wanted to interrupt it. Then I leaned against the dock railing. How long? Victoria stared at the water. 3 days. Silence. 3 days? She nodded. The board meeting is Thursday morning. Another pause. They want me back in Chicago by Wednesday night. My stomach tightened. Then I looked toward the boys again. Have you told Oliver? Victoria shook her head immediately. No. Another pause. I don't know how. The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. This was a woman who negotiated billion-dollar deals before breakfast. Yet telling her son bad news felt impossible. Then again, that made perfect sense. Business problems have spreadsheets. Family problems don't. The next morning felt different. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone felt it. Victoria smiled less. Oliver seemed quieter. Even Liam noticed. The kid noticed everything. Then around lunchtime he cornered me near the bait shop. Something's wrong, I sighed. What makes you say that? Liam rolled his eyes. Dad, fair point. Then he lowered his voice. Is Oliver leaving? My pulse accelerated, because I hadn't told him anything. Then I realized he didn't need anyone to tell him. He'd figured it out himself. Maybe. Liam looked toward the lake. Toward Oliver sitting alone on the dock. Then he whispered, That sucks. It did. More than I wanted to admit. That afternoon we took the boat farther out than usual. The weather was perfect. Blue sky, light breeze, calm water, Yet the mood felt heavy. Then Liam suddenly stood up. Night fishing. I blinked. What? He grinned. We should go night fishing. Oliver looked confused. Why? Liam stared at him like he'd asked why people breathe. Because it's awesome. Another pause. Also because Dad tells better stories at night. I pointed at him. That is not true. Liam immediately replied, It's completely true. Even Oliver smiled. Then he looked at me. Do you actually tell stories? I sighed dramatically. Unfortunately, Liam laughed. See? Then, for the first time all day, Oliver looked interested in something. Can we? His eyes shifted toward Victoria. The CEO hesitated, then surprised everyone. Okay. Liam nearly celebrated like he'd won the lottery. A few hours later, darkness settled across Willow Lake. The boat drifted quietly beneath a sky full of stars. Tiny lanterns illuminated the deck. Fish occasionally broke the surface. The entire lake felt different at night. Slower, softer, more honest somehow. The boys sat at the front of the boat. Victoria sat beside me near the stern. Nobody spoke for a while. Then Liam pointed upward. You can see everything out here. Oliver followed his gaze. Thousands of stars stretched across the sky. Then he whispered, I've never seen this many before. Victoria looked surprised. Really? Oliver shrugged. Chicago has too many lights. Silence followed. Then Liam smiled. Dad says stars make people tell the truth. I immediately frowned. I never said that. You kinda did. No. Yes. Even Victoria laughed. Then the conversation drifted naturally. School, fishing, movies. Random nonsense only teenagers find important. For a while everything felt normal, peaceful. Then Oliver asked a question. A simple question. The kind that changes everything. Do you ever miss her? The boat fell silent. Complete silence. My pulse tightened immediately, because I knew exactly who he meant. Emma, my wife, Liam's mother. Then I looked at my son. He stared at the water, waiting, listening. Finally I nodded. Every day, silence, complete silence. Then Oliver looked surprised. Even after 5 years? I smiled sadly. Especially after 5 years. Another pause. You don't stop loving people because time passes. Nobody spoke. The boat drifted quietly beneath the stars. Then Oliver asked another question, softer this time. Does it ever stop hurting? My chest tightened, because this wasn't really about Emma anymore. Then I answered honestly. No. Silence. No? I shook my head. But you learn how to carry it. The lake seemed impossibly quiet. Then Oliver looked down at his hands. For several seconds I thought the conversation was over. Then he whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. I don't think I know how. Victoria froze, completely froze. My stomach tightened immediately, because suddenly I understood. This wasn't just grief. This was something deeper, something heavier. Then Oliver stood up. I need some air. Liam looked confused. We're literally surrounded by air. Nobody laughed. Not even Liam. Then Oliver walked toward the far end of the boat. Alone, staring into the darkness. The atmosphere changed instantly. Victoria looked like she wanted to follow him. Didn't. Then she whispered, That's the closest he's come. Silence. To what? Her eyes never left her son. Talking about Daniel. The realization hit me immediately. 5 years. 5 years and the wound was still sitting there untouched. Then I watched Oliver standing alone beneath the stars. Shoulders tense, head lowered, carrying something far too heavy for a 13-year-old boy. And for the first time since meeting him, I became certain of one thing. Oliver Hayes wasn't just grieving his father, he was hiding something. Something he had never told anyone. Not his therapists, not his mother, nobody. And whatever that secret was, it was slowly breaking him apart. And for the first time since meeting him, I became certain of one thing. Oliver Hayes wasn't just grieving his father, he was hiding something. Something he had never told anyone. Not his therapists, not his mother, nobody. And whatever that secret was, it was slowly breaking him apart. The rest of the fishing trip ended quietly. Oliver never mentioned his father again. Victoria never pushed. Liam, sensing something serious had happened, somehow managed to stay unusually quiet for almost 20 minutes. A personal record. Then we returned to shore. The moment the boat touched the dock, Oliver climbed out and headed toward the SUV. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Victoria watched him leave. Her expression told me everything. She was used to this. The distance, the silence, the walls. Then she turned toward me. You saw it too. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Yeah. Silence. Complete silence. Then she whispered, "What is it?" I looked toward the SUV where Oliver sat staring out the window. I don't know. Another pause. But it's more than grief. Victoria lowered her eyes, because deep down she already knew that. The next few days passed slowly. The deadline for Chicago grew closer. Wednesday night, then Wednesday afternoon, then tomorrow. Every hour felt heavier than the last. Yet something else was happening too. Oliver was changing. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But enough. He spent more time outside. More time with Liam. More time smiling when he forgot to stop himself. One afternoon I found the boys repairing an old rowboat behind the marina. The boat looked terrible. The repair job looked worse. But they were laughing. Then Liam pointed at a crooked board. "You're terrible at this." Oliver smiled. "You're literally holding the hammer backwards." Liam looked down. "Oh." Silence. Then both boys burst out laughing. I stood there watching them for a moment. Then a voice beside me said softly, "I haven't seen him laugh that much since Daniel died." Victoria. She had arrived without me noticing. We stood side by side watching the boys. Then she surprised me. "Do you think I'm a bad mother?" My pulse tightened immediately, because that wasn't a question people ask casually. Then I looked at her. Really looked at her. The exhaustion beneath her eyes. The guilt. The fear. The loneliness. Finally, I answered honestly. "No." She looked unconvinced. "Really?" I nodded. "I think you're terrified." Silence. Complete silence. Then she laughed softly. "That's not exactly better." "Actually it is." Another pause. "Bad parents don't worry this much." Victoria looked away immediately. Toward the lake. Toward her son. Anywhere except me. Then she whispered, "I don't know how to reach him anymore." The pain in her voice nearly broke my heart. Then I smiled gently. "Maybe you don't need to reach him." She frowned. "What?" I pointed toward Oliver. "Maybe you just need to stand still long enough for him to find his way back." For several seconds she didn't respond. Then she looked at me. Something changed behind her eyes. Small, subtle, but real. Before either of us could say anything else, Liam came running toward us. "Dad?" My son looked excited. Very excited. Which was usually dangerous. Then he stopped in front of us. "Oliver wants to show you something." My stomach immediately tightened. Because Oliver Hayes was not the kind of kid who voluntarily showed people things. Then we followed Liam toward the old boathouse near the edge of the marina. Oliver stood inside waiting. Nervous. Hands shoved deep into his pockets. Then he pointed toward a workbench. Silence. Complete silence. Victoria stepped forward. Then froze. Completely froze. My pulse accelerated. Because sitting on the workbench was a model airplane. Handmade. Detailed. Beautiful. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Every piece carefully built. Every detail perfect. Then Victoria slowly walked closer, her eyes widening. "Oliver." Her voice barely worked. "You made this?" Oliver nodded once, then looked away, like he already regretted showing it. Then Victoria touched the wing carefully, almost reverently. Suddenly tears appeared in her eyes, real tears. Then she whispered, "Your father used to build these." The room fell silent. Oliver stopped moving. Completely. Then Victoria looked at the model again. "When did you make this?" Silence. Complete silence. Finally Oliver answered. "A while ago." Another pause. "Last year." Victoria looked stunned. "Last year?" Oliver nodded. Then the room went quiet again. Because everyone understood the same thing at the same time. For an entire year, Oliver had been building model airplanes in secret. Airplanes just like his father's. Airplanes he had never shown anyone, not even his mother. Then Victoria asked softly, "Why didn't you tell me?" The question lingered in the air. Oliver stared at the floor. Then his hands started shaking. Just slightly, but enough. My stomach tightened immediately, because whatever came next mattered. Then Oliver finally looked up. His eyes were filled with something I'd seen before. Shame. Pure shame. Then he whispered the words that had been trapped inside him for 5 years. "Because it was my fault." The entire room froze. Victoria blinked. "What?" Oliver's voice cracked. "Dad died because of me." Complete silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Oliver took a shaky step backward. We had a fight. Another pause. A really bad one. Tears appeared instantly. I told him I hated him. Victoria looked like she'd been struck. Then Oliver continued, the words pouring out faster now. 5 years of pain finally breaking free. He left angry. Another pause. Then the plane crashed. His shoulders shook violently. If I hadn't said it. Another pause. If I hadn't fought with him. Another pause. He'd still be alive. The boathouse fell completely silent, because after 5 years, the secret was finally out. Because after 5 years, the secret was finally out. The boathouse fell completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the gentle sounds of Willow Lake outside seemed distant. Oliver stood frozen beside the workbench. Tears streamed down his face. His hands trembled uncontrollably. 5 years of guilt, 5 years of shame, 5 years of carrying a burden that had slowly crushed him from the inside. And now it was finally in the open. Victoria looked like she couldn't breathe. Her eyes remained locked on her son. Then she whispered, "Oliver." Her voice cracked immediately. But Oliver shook his head. "No." Another pause. "You don't understand." More tears appeared. I said horrible things. Silence. Complete silence. Then he continued. He missed my soccer game. Another pause. Again. Another pause. I was angry. His shoulders shook violently. I told him I wished he cared more about flying than being my dad. The words seemed to physically hurt him. Then he looked away. Ashamed, broken. Those were the last things I ever said to him. Victoria closed her eyes. For a moment I thought she might collapse. Then she took a slow breath. Another. Then she walked toward her son. Oliver immediately stepped backward. Fear flashed across his face. Real fear. Because somewhere deep inside, a 13-year-old boy had convinced himself that his mother blamed him too. Then Victoria stopped. Not because she wanted to, because she realized he needed space. Then she spoke softly. "Oliver." Silence. "Look at me." He couldn't. Then she tried again. "Please." The word nearly broke my heart. Slowly, reluctantly, Oliver raised his eyes. Then Victoria did something neither of them expected. She started crying. Not the quiet, controlled tears of a CEO. Real tears. The kind people spend years hiding. Then she shook her head. "Oh, sweetheart." Her voice barely worked. "No." Silence. Complete silence. "No?" Oliver whispered. Victoria stepped forward again. This time he didn't move away. Then she placed both hands gently on his face. "Your father loved you more than anything in this world." Tears continued falling down her cheeks. "More than his company." Another pause. "More than flying." Another pause. "More than me." Oliver stared at her. Frozen. Then Victoria smiled sadly. "Do you know what Daniel talked about on every business trip?" Silence. "What?" Her voice trembled. "You." The room fell silent again. Then she laughed through her tears. Every phone call. Another pause. Every meeting. Another pause. Every conversation. She shook her head. People probably thought he only had one child in the world. Oliver's eyes widened slightly. Then Victoria continued. "The day of the crash wasn't your fault." Silence. "But I told him I hated him." Her expression softened. Then she smiled sadly. "Oliver." Another pause. "Have you ever been angry at me?" The boy blinked. "Yes." "Have you ever said something you didn't mean?" Silence. Complete silence. Then he nodded. Slowly. Victoria squeezed his hands. "So did your father." The room froze. Then she continued. "When he left that day." Another pause. "He wasn't thinking about an argument." Another pause. He was thinking about how much he loved you. Tears rolled down Oliver's face, uncontrollably now. Then Victoria whispered the sentence she'd probably needed to say for 5 years. Daniel never blamed you. Silence. Complete silence. Never. Something broke inside Oliver then. Not in a bad way. In the way frozen lakes break when spring finally arrives. Suddenly all the emotion he'd been holding back came pouring out. He collapsed into his mother's arms and sobbed. Not quietly. Not politely. He cried like a little boy who had spent half a decade carrying something impossible. Victoria held him tightly, crying too. Neither of them cared who was watching. Neither of them cared how they looked. 5 years of pain were finally finding a way out. I looked away, gave them privacy. Even Liam stayed quiet. For once. Then my son moved beside me. Is he going to be okay? He whispered. I looked toward Oliver, toward Victoria, toward the family finally beginning to heal. Then I nodded. Yeah. Silence. I think he is. The 4 of us left the boathouse nearly an hour later. Nobody said much. Nobody needed to. Some conversations change everything. This had been one of them. That evening, Victoria stayed behind after the boys returned to the lake house. The sun had already disappeared. The marina was quiet. Just the 2 of us sitting at the end of the dock, neither speaking. Finally, Victoria broke the silence. Thank you. I looked at her. For what? She laughed softly. For all of it. Another pause. For seeing what everyone else missed, the moon reflected across the lake. Then she looked down at her hands. I've spent 5 years trying to fix him. Silence. And? Her smile was small, sad, honest. Turns out he didn't need fixing. Another pause. He needed forgiveness. The words lingered between us. Then we sat quietly for a while longer. The kind of silence that no longer felt empty. Then Victoria looked at me. Really looked at me, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. I don't want to go back to Chicago. My pulse accelerated immediately. Then she laughed softly. That's probably a terrible thing for a CEO to admit. I smiled. Probably. Another pause. But I understand. For a moment neither of us spoke. The distance between us suddenly felt much smaller than before. Then headlights appeared in the distance. A vehicle racing toward the marina. Too fast. Much too fast. My stomach tightened immediately. Because nobody drove like that in Willow Lake unless something was wrong. Very wrong. Seconds later, the truck skidded into the parking lot. The local sheriff jumped out, breathless, panicked. Then he shouted words that instantly turned my blood cold. Have either of you seen Oliver? Silence. Complete silence. Then the sheriff shook his head. Because he's gone. Because he's gone. The sheriff's words hit like a punch to the chest. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My brain refused to process what I'd just heard. Then Victoria stood so quickly she nearly lost her balance. What do you mean gone? Her voice sounded different, sharp, panicked, terrified. The sheriff removed his hat. We found the lake house empty. Silence. Complete silence. Liam said Oliver left about 40 minutes ago. My stomach dropped immediately because I already knew where this was heading. Then Victoria shook her head. No. Another pause. No, he wouldn't. The sheriff hesitated before handing me a folded piece of paper. My pulse accelerated before I even opened it because somehow I already knew. Then I unfolded the note. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, rushed. Mom, I'm sorry. I know you want me to get better. I know Ethan and Liam tried to help, but I don't think I deserve it. I think everybody would be happier if I stopped causing problems. Tell Liam thank you. Tell Ethan I'm sorry. Love, Oliver. The world seemed to stop moving. Victoria stared at the note, then her knees nearly gave out. I caught her before she fell. No, she whispered the word over and over again. No, no, no. The sheriff looked grim. We've already started searching. Silence. Complete silence. Then my pulse exploded because suddenly something clicked. A memory. A conversation. The model airplane. The fishing trip. The stars. Then I looked toward the northern shoreline, and my blood ran cold. The airfield. The sheriff blinked. What? I looked directly at him. Daniel Hayes used to fly from the old airfield north of the lake. Victoria froze instantly. Then her eyes widened because she understood. The old private airfield had been abandoned for years, but Daniel's memorial plaque still stood there. Oliver had visited it once when he was younger and never again, until tonight. The sheriff immediately grabbed his radio. "We're heading north." Within minutes, half the town seemed involved. Pickup trucks, sheriff vehicles, search lights, volunteers, everybody, because that's what small towns do. They show up. The drive felt endless. Victoria sat beside me, gripping the note so tightly it looked ready to tear apart. She hadn't stopped crying, not once. Then she whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. "This is my fault." I immediately shook my head. "No." Silence. "It is." "No." Her voice cracked. I pushed him. "I should have seen this." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "Victoria." Silence. Then I looked directly at her. "This isn't your fault." The words sounded familiar, because only a few hours earlier she'd said the same thing to Oliver. Now she couldn't believe it herself. The irony hurt. 20 minutes later we reached the abandoned airfield. The place looked eerie beneath the moonlight. Long grass, broken fencing, weathered hangars, and beyond everything else, a small memorial stone dedicated to Daniel Hayes. My pulse hammered. Then my blood instantly turned to ice because Oliver was sitting on the edge of the old runway. Alone. 100 yards away. Staring at the memorial. The relief hit so hard it nearly hurt. Then Victoria started running. "Oliver." The boy looked up, immediately stood, then froze because suddenly dozens of flashlights illuminated the runway. Sheriff vehicles, volunteers, search teams, his mother, everyone. The expression on his face shattered my heart. Not relief, guilt, pure guilt. Like he'd disappointed everyone again. Then Victoria reached him. Neither spoke. For several seconds they simply stared at each other. Then Oliver whispered, "I'm sorry." Victoria broke completely. She wrapped her arms around him so tightly I thought she'd never let go. "You never have to apologize for hurting." The words echoed across the runway. Silence followed. Complete silence. Then Oliver started crying again. Not because he was sad, because he was exhausted. Because he'd spent 5 years fighting a battle nobody else could see, and he was finally too tired to carry it alone. Then something unexpected happened. A low rumble echoed across the lake. Thunder. I looked up. Dark clouds were moving in. Fast. Very fast. The sheriff frowned immediately. Storm. Another rumble followed, closer this time. Then the first drops of rain began to fall. Within seconds, the wind intensified. The calm summer night vanished. The sheriff raised his voice. "We need to move. Now." Everyone started heading back toward the vehicles. Everyone except Oliver. Because halfway across the runway, he suddenly stopped. Completely stopped. Then looked toward the memorial one last time. Toward his father. Toward 5 years of pain. Toward 5 years of guilt. Finally, he whispered something only the people closest to him heard. "Goodbye, Dad." The wind carried the words away. Then Oliver turned around, and for the first time in 5 years, he walked away from the guilt instead of toward it. But as the storm exploded across Willow Lake and lightning illuminated the dark sky, nobody realized something else was happening. The old dock near the northern shoreline had already broken loose, and in less than an hour, someone's life would be hanging in the balance. The old dock near the northern shoreline had already broken loose. And in less than an hour, someone's life would be hanging in the balance. The storm arrived faster than anyone expected. By the time we left the abandoned airfield, rain was hammering the windshield so hard I could barely see the road. Lightning flashed across the sky every few seconds. Thunder rolled over Willow Lake like cannon fire. The sheriff's radio never stopped crackling. Fallen trees, power outages, flooded roads. The entire town seemed to be fighting the storm at once. Yet despite everything, one thing mattered most. Oliver was safe. For the first time in years, the weight crushing his shoulders had finally begun to lift. As we drove back toward town, he sat quietly in the back seat beside Liam. Neither boy spoke much. They didn't need to. Sometimes friendship isn't about finding the right words. Sometimes it's simply staying. Then a sudden voice exploded through the sheriff's radio. "Emergency at North Point Marina. Static filled the air. Then another voice shouted. The storm snapped the main dock loose. My pulse immediately accelerated. North Point Marina. My marina. The sheriff grabbed the radio. Any injuries? Silence followed. Then the answer came. One person trapped. My stomach dropped. Completely. Then another crackle. Correction. Another pause. Possibly two. The truck fell silent. Victoria looked at me. I looked at her. Neither of us spoke because we both knew exactly what I was thinking. Then I pressed harder on the accelerator. Rain slammed against the windshield. The truck bounced over puddles. Lightning illuminated the lake beside us. The storm looked angry, alive, dangerous. 20 minutes later, we reached the marina. Chaos greeted us immediately. Emergency vehicles, searchlights, volunteers, sheriff deputies. Half the town had gathered despite the weather. Then I saw the damage. My stomach turned. The northern dock had broken free exactly as reported. Massive sections of wood drifted through the water. Support beams floated everywhere. Boats slammed against one another in the waves. Then somebody shouted my name. Ethan. I turned. One of the marina workers came running toward me, soaked from head to toe. What happened? I asked. The man pointed toward the lake. Old Mr. Harrison went out before the storm hit. My pulse accelerated. What? He was trying to secure his fishing boat. Another pause. Then the dock collapsed. The world seemed to stop. Mr. Harrison was 72 years old. Stubborn, kind, practically part of the marina itself. Then I looked toward the water. Searchlights swept across the waves. Rain hammered the lake. Visibility was terrible. Did anyone reach him? Silence. Complete silence. The answer appeared on the man's face before he spoke. No. Then another voice shouted from the shoreline. We've got movement. Every head turned. Searchlights immediately converged on a dark shape nearly 300 yards offshore. My pulse exploded. Because someone was out there. Then a wave crashed over the object. For a second it disappeared completely. Then reappeared. A small fishing boat. Half submerged. Barely visible. Then another voice shouted, "There's somebody inside." The shoreline erupted with activity. Rescue teams moved immediately. Ropes, life jackets, equipment. Everyone trying to figure out a way through the storm. Then one of the rescue workers shook his head. The waves are too rough. Silence followed. Then another. If we launch now, we'll lose another boat. The realization hit everyone at once. Mr. Harrison was stranded, and nobody could reach him. Then a familiar voice spoke behind me. I can. My blood ran cold, because I knew that voice. Ethan Brooks. Me. Victoria immediately turned around. Absolutely not. I looked toward the water, toward the drifting boat, toward the man trapped inside, then back at her. There's no time. Lightning illuminated the shoreline. Thunder shook the marina. Then Victoria stepped closer. Ethan. Her voice cracked. No. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The storm, the crowd, the chaos. Just the two of us. Then I smiled gently. I've been on this lake my whole life. Silence. That's exactly why this terrifies me. The honesty in her voice nearly broke me. Then another desperate shout echoed across the water. The trapped boat had drifted even farther away. Time was running out. Then Oliver suddenly stepped forward. He's right. Everyone looked at him. The boy swallowed hard. Then continued. If anyone can do it. Another pause. It's Ethan. Complete silence followed. Then Liam moved beside him. Dad always comes back. The confidence in his voice hit harder than any storm ever could, because he believed it completely. Then I looked at my son, really looked at him, the kid who had lost one parent already, the kid trusting me to return. My chest tightened. Then I grabbed a life jacket. 5 minutes later, I was climbing into the rescue boat. Rain poured from the sky. Wind slammed against the hull. Waves crashed hard enough to shake my teeth. The entire shoreline watched. Victoria stood near the dock. Oliver beside her. Liam beside Oliver. All three staring at the lake. Then I started the engine. The rescue boat surged forward into darkness. The storm swallowed me almost immediately. The shoreline disappeared. The lights vanished. Only black water remained. Then lightning flashed overhead. For a brief second, the stranded fishing boat became visible. Farther away than I expected, drifting faster than I feared, my pulse hammered. Then I pushed the throttle harder. The rescue boat slammed over another wave, then another, then another. Every instinct screamed that this was a terrible idea. Unfortunately, somebody was still out there. Minutes felt like hours. Rain blinded me. Wind roared in my ears. Then finally I saw him, Mr. Harrison, clinging to the side of the damaged boat, barely conscious, barely moving. Relief flooded through me. Then another wave hit, massive, violent. The rescue boat lifted sharply. My stomach dropped. Then everything went sideways, literally. The world flipped. Water exploded around me. Something slammed into my shoulder. Then darkness swallowed everything. Back on shore, a collective gasp erupted from the crowd. Because under the flash of lightning, everyone had seen the same thing. Ethan's rescue boat had disappeared. Because under the flash of lightning, everyone had seen the same thing. Ethan's rescue boat had disappeared. The shoreline froze. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. For one horrifying second, the entire world seemed to stop. Then Victoria screamed my name, "Ethan!" The sound cut through the storm, through the thunder, through everything. But the lake didn't answer. Another wave crashed across the water. Searchlights swept frantically through the darkness. The rescue team rushed forward. The sheriff grabbed a radio. Voices erupted everywhere. Orders, coordinates, emergency calls. Yet none of it mattered. Because from the shoreline, all anyone could see was black water. Then Liam took a step forward. My son looked terrified, truly terrified, but he wasn't crying. Not yet. "Dad?" Silence. Complete silence. "Dad." Oliver grabbed his arm before he could run toward the dock. The two boys stood together in the rain, watching, waiting, praying. Then another bolt of lightning split the sky. For half a second the lake became visible, and suddenly someone shouted, "There!" Every searchlight swung toward the same point. My pulse would have exploded if I had been standing on shore, because nearly 200 yards away, a figure emerged from the darkness. Then another. Then another. A rescue worker nearly collapsed with relief. "He's alive." The crowd erupted. Victoria didn't wait. The moment the rescue boat reappeared, she started running. The shoreline blurred beneath sheets of rain. Then the damaged vessel finally reached shallow water. Two rescue workers jumped in immediately. They pulled Mr. Harrison to safety first. The old man was weak but alive. Then they turned toward me. I was conscious. Barely. My shoulder hurt like hell. My face was covered in blood from a cut above my eyebrow. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest. But I was alive. The moment my boots touched the dock, Victoria threw her arms around me. Hard. The entire marina went silent, because nobody expected it, least of all her. Then she realized what she'd done. But she didn't let go. Not immediately. For several seconds she simply held on, like she was making sure I was real, making sure I was still there. Then she pulled back, tears mixed with rainwater on her face. "You idiot." I laughed painfully. "I've been called worse. You could have died." The words came out almost angry. Almost, but underneath the anger was something else. Something neither of us was ready to discuss. Then Liam slammed into me from the side. "Dad, I nearly lost my balance." "Easy. Don't ever do that again." "I'll try." "No." Another pause. "Promise." I looked at him, then smiled. "Okay." Behind him, Oliver stood quietly. Then he stepped forward. Something had changed in his eyes. The guilt was still there, the sadness too, but not the hopelessness, not anymore. Then he surprised everyone. He hugged me. Quick, awkward, genuine. "Thank you," he whispered. My chest tightened immediately. Then I rested a hand on his shoulder. "For what?" Oliver looked toward Mr. Harrison being loaded into an ambulance. Then back at me. "For showing me something." Silence. "What's that?" The boy smiled slightly. A real smile. That people don't give up on each other. The words hit harder than the storm ever could. The next morning the town looked completely different. The storm had passed. The sky was clear. The lake was calm again. Like none of the chaos had ever happened. But things had changed. Oliver laughed more. Victoria stopped checking her phone every 5 minutes. Liam wouldn't stop telling everyone how his dad fought a hurricane. The story became more ridiculous every time he told it. By lunchtime, I was apparently wrestling sharks while saving an entire fleet of fishing boats. Then came the board meeting, the reason Victoria and Oliver were supposed to leave, the reason all of this had started. We sat together on the marina dock while she prepared for a video conference with Chicago. Her expression looked calmer than I'd ever seen it. Then she closed her laptop. "I've made a decision." My pulse accelerated slightly. "About the board?" She nodded. "About everything." Silence followed. Then she looked toward Oliver and Liam, skipping stones along the shoreline. "I'm not taking him back yet." Complete silence. Then she smiled. "For the first time in years, my son is healing." Another pause. "The company can wait." I laughed softly. "Your board isn't going to like that." Victoria smiled. A dangerous smile. The kind, powerful people wear before destroying someone's argument. They'll survive. Then her phone rang. The board meeting was beginning. Victoria stood up, took a deep breath, then looked at me. "Wish me luck." I smiled. "You'll be fine." She held my gaze for a second longer than necessary, then walked away. Neither of us noticed Oliver watching from the shoreline, or the grin spreading across Liam's face, because both boys had just noticed something we were trying very hard not to notice ourselves. And later that afternoon, they were going to do something about it. Neither of us noticed Oliver watching from the shoreline, or the grin spreading across Liam's face, because both boys had just noticed something we were trying very hard not to notice ourselves. And later that afternoon, they were going to do something about it. The board meeting lasted nearly 3 hours. 3 very long hours. I spent most of that time repairing storm damage around the marina while Liam and Oliver disappeared together. That alone should have worried me. Whenever 2 teenage boys vanish with identical expressions, trouble usually follows. Then again, after everything Oliver had been through, seeing him happy felt worth the risk. Around 4 o'clock, Victoria finally emerged from the lake house carrying her laptop. Her expression was impossible to read. My pulse tightened immediately. Then she spotted me near the dock and started walking over. "Well?" I asked. She stared at me for several seconds, then smiled. "I still have a job." I laughed. "Good start. Apparently threatening to resign gets people's attention." I blinked. "You threatened to resign?" Victoria shrugged casually. "A little." Silence. Complete silence. Then I laughed harder. "Remind me never to negotiate against you." Smart decision. For a moment neither of us spoke. The afternoon sun reflected across the lake. Everything felt peaceful again. Then Victoria surprised me. "Thank you." I frowned. "For what this time?" She smiled softly. "For reminding me what's important." The words lingered between us. Then footsteps approached. Fast footsteps. Suspiciously excited footsteps. I turned around. Liam and Oliver were running toward us, carrying a large cardboard box. My stomach immediately tightened. "No." Liam grinned. "Yes, absolutely not." Oliver looked far too pleased with himself. "Definitely, yes." The boys dropped the box onto a picnic table, then stepped backward like magicians, revealing a masterpiece. I looked inside. My pulse nearly stopped. Victoria froze beside me, because the box contained photographs. Hundreds of them. Photos from the entire summer, Liam teaching Oliver how to cast a fishing line, Oliver laughing on the boat, Victoria sitting on the dock at sunset, me helping the boys repair the rowboat, family dinners, fishing trips, campfires, moments, real moments, the kind nobody realizes are important until later. Then Liam cleared his throat dramatically. Presentation time. I immediately knew disaster was coming. Then Oliver pulled out a poster board. My stomach dropped. "Oh no." Victoria covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Then Liam pointed at the board. Across the top, written in giant letters, were the words, "Reasons Ethan and Victoria should go on a date." The entire marina went silent, completely silent. Then I closed my eyes because death seemed preferable. "Number 1, Liam announced proudly. "They already act married." Victoria nearly choked. Oliver continued immediately. "Number 2, they spend more time together than anyone else here." Number 3, Liam added. Mom would have approved. That one hit me hard. Very hard. The smile disappeared from my face for a second. Then Oliver spoke softly. My dad would have too. Silence followed. Complete silence. The joking atmosphere vanished instantly because suddenly this wasn't about teasing anymore. It was about two boys who had lost parents. Two boys who desperately wanted the people they loved to be happy. Then Liam looked at me. You're allowed to be happy, Dad. My throat tightened immediately. Then Oliver looked at Victoria. So are you, Mom. The lake seemed impossibly quiet. Neither Victoria nor I knew what to say. Then Liam smiled. Okay. Another pause. We'll leave now. The boys immediately started walking away. Then stopped. Turned around. And shouted together, ask each other out. Before sprinting down the dock like fugitives, Victoria buried her face in her hands. I laughed. Then she started laughing too, the kind of laugh that comes from complete embarrassment. For several minutes neither of us could stop. Finally the laughter faded. The silence that followed felt different. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, just honest. Then Victoria looked out across the lake. Children are terrifying. Agreed. Another pause. The worst part is they're probably right. My pulse accelerated immediately because there it was, out in the open, no pretending anymore, no hiding behind conversations about fishing or grief or parenting, just truth. Then Victoria turned toward me. The afternoon sunlight caught her eyes. For a moment, she didn't look like a billionaire CEO. She looked like a woman who had finally stopped running. Can I tell you something? She asked quietly. I nodded. Sure. She took a deep breath, then another. I was terrified when I came here. Silence. Because of Oliver? She nodded. And because of me. Another pause. I didn't know who I was anymore. The honesty in her voice hit me harder than I expected. Then she smiled sadly. For 5 years I was either a CEO or a widow, nothing else. I understood more than she realized because after Emma died, I had spent years being only one thing too, a grieving husband, a single father, surviving instead of living. Then Victoria looked at me, really looked at me, and somewhere between fishing trips, broken boats, thunderstorms, and ridiculous children, she laughed softly. I remembered how to breathe again. The words settled gently between us. Then my pulse hammered because I knew exactly what I wanted to say. And suddenly I was terrified. More terrified than I had been in the storm, more terrified than any rescue mission. Then I took a breath. Victoria. Silence. Complete silence. Yeah? I smiled. Small, nervous, honest. Dinner. She blinked. Dinner? I nodded. A normal dinner. Another pause. No board members, no investors, no emergencies. Her smile slowly widened. Then she stepped closer. Not much. Just enough. I'd like that. The world seemed to stop for a second. Then a familiar voice echoed across the marina. Finally! Both of us turned. Liam and Oliver were hiding behind a stack of fishing crates, celebrating like they'd just won the Super Bowl. Victoria laughed so hard she nearly doubled over. And for the first time in a very long time, the future felt possible. But neither of us knew that tomorrow morning would bring one final surprise. A surprise waiting inside a small envelope addressed to Oliver Hayes, one that would change his life forever. The future felt possible, but neither of us knew that tomorrow morning would bring one final surprise. A surprise waiting inside a small envelope addressed to Oliver Hayes, one that would change his life forever. The next morning arrived calm and beautiful. The storm was gone. The lake sparkled beneath the summer sun. Everything felt lighter somehow, as if Willow Lake itself had decided to celebrate. I was sitting on the marina dock with a cup of coffee when the mail truck pulled into the parking lot. Nothing unusual, except for one envelope, thick, official-looking, addressed directly to Oliver Hayes. The boy was helping Liam repair the same rowboat they had been unsuccessfully repairing for weeks. When I handed him the envelope, he looked confused. "What's this?" I shrugged. Only one way to find out. Victoria arrived a few minutes later carrying breakfast. She sat beside us as Oliver carefully opened the envelope. Then he froze. Completely froze. Liam immediately leaned over his shoulder. "What is it?" Silence. Complete silence. Then Oliver blinked. Once, Twice, 3 times. Finally, he looked up. I got in. Victoria frowned. Got into what? Oliver handed her the letter. The moment she started reading, her eyes widened. Then her hand flew to her mouth. My pulse accelerated. What? Victoria looked at Oliver, then back at the letter, then at Oliver again. Tears immediately filled her eyes. The National Aviation Youth Academy. Silence. Complete silence. My stomach tightened. Because I knew exactly what that meant. The academy was one of the most prestigious aviation programs in the country. Thousands applied every year. Very few were accepted. Then Liam looked confused. Wait. Another pause. That's the airplane thing. Oliver nodded slowly, still looking stunned. Then Liam exploded. You got in? The entire marina probably heard him. Oliver laughed. Actually laughed. Then Victoria stood up and wrapped her arms around her son. I'm so proud of you. Her voice cracked immediately. So proud. For a moment neither moved. Mother and son standing in the morning sunlight, holding on to each other. 5 years ago, grief had almost destroyed them. Now they were finally finding their way back. Then Oliver looked down at the acceptance letter. Dad would have liked this. Victoria smiled through her tears. He would have loved it. Silence followed. Then she added softly, and he'd be bragging to absolutely everyone. Oliver laughed again. This time louder, easier, freer. The kind of laugh that had become more common over the past few weeks. The kind that sounded like healing. That evening, Willow Lake hosted its annual summer festival. The entire town showed up. Food stands lined the waterfront. Live music drifted through the air. Children ran between booths. The lake glowed beneath strings of hanging lights. It felt like something from a movie. Liam and Oliver had somehow convinced the organizers to let them run a small fishing booth. The result was complete chaos. Neither boy had any idea how to manage customers. Yet somehow they attracted the largest crowd at the festival, mostly because people enjoyed watching them argue about fishing techniques. Meanwhile, Victoria and I wandered along the shoreline, neither in a hurry, neither pretending anymore. Then she slipped her hand into mine, naturally, effortlessly, like it had always belonged there. My pulse immediately accelerated. Victoria noticed and laughed. You're still nervous. A little. You rescued someone during a hurricane. That was easier. She laughed harder. Then we continued walking. The music played softly behind us. The lights reflected across the water. Somewhere nearby, Liam shouted because Oliver had apparently beaten him in another fishing contest. Life felt wonderfully normal. Then a voice called out from the stage. Victoria Hayes? We both turned. The festival organizer waved toward us. Could we borrow you for a moment? Victoria looked confused but walked toward the stage anyway. I followed. So did half the town. Then the organizer smiled. Actually, another pause. This is for both of you. My stomach immediately tightened, because whenever small towns organize surprises, nobody is safe. Then the giant screen behind the stage lit up. Photographs appeared. Summer photographs. Oliver laughing. Liam fishing. Campfires. Boat rides. Sunsets. Family dinners. Every important moment from the past few months. The crowd watched quietly, smiling. Then the final photograph appeared. All 4 of us standing together on the marina dock, looking exactly like a family. The realization hit me at the same moment it hit Victoria. Then the crowd began applauding, slowly at first, then louder still. Across the front row, Liam and Oliver stood shoulder to shoulder, grinning, looking entirely too proud of themselves. Then Oliver raised his acceptance letter into the air. The crowd cheered again. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Mine probably did too. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, the same way she had that day on the dock when everything changed. Then she smiled. Warm, genuine, happy. You know, she said softly, I came here because I thought my son needed saving. Silence. Complete silence. Then she squeezed my hand. Turns out we both did. The words settled gently between us. Then I smiled. Good thing you hired the fishing guide. She laughed. The music swelled. The crowd cheered. The boys celebrated like they'd just won another championship. And standing there beneath the festival lights, With Willow Lake shining behind us and a future waiting ahead, I realized something important. Life doesn't always give you a second chance. Sometimes it gives you something better. A new beginning. 5 years earlier, grief had taken pieces of all of us. A husband, a father, a wife, a future we thought we understood. But somehow, through fishing trips, thunderstorms, laughter, friendship, forgiveness, and one unforgettable summer, we found our way back. Oliver stopped carrying the guilt that never belonged to him. Victoria remembered how to live instead of merely survive. Liam gained a brother, and I discovered that even after losing the love of your life, your heart can still make room for hope. The sun eventually set beyond Willow Lake. The festival lights reflected across the water, and for the first time in a very long time, every one of us was exactly where we belonged.